We're in the process of building a V8 swapped all-wheel drive 2nd Gen S-10, kind of in the pro touring style, and I've nicknamed it the 2nd Gen Syclone because ultimately it will also have forced induction. I'm gathering all the parts for the engine swap kind of as we speak. I think for now it's going to wind up with this 5.3 right here. We'll do some mild upgrades to it, you know, bigger cam headers and some other stuff just to get the engine in and get it running. Ultimately, it will get replaced with something bigger, like a 6.2 or maybe a 408. Ultimately, forced induction, like we said. But one of the things I want to knock out first is just get the chassis situated and sorted because it's not perfect. We talked last time about the rear suspension, how we have really bad wheel hop and how we're going to convert to a 3-link. I'm not going to start that today, but the thing I am going to get finished up has to do with the steering. So if you have a 2nd Gen S-10 that drives a little bit all over the place, you're going to want to pay attention today because hopefully we are going to fix it. Last fall, we went through the front suspension. So the truck has new lower and upper control arms. It has new tie rods, inner and outer, new steering gearbox from Redhead, a new pitman and idler arm. So basically everything in the chassis side is brand new, but it still drives kind of all over the place. And I think what the problem is the steering shaft. So we are going to replace it today and also help make preparations for the LS swap to come. So the two parts that I'm going to be putting on are right over here, or these are the boxes. We got this part number from Hooker and we have this part number from Dorman. This is the upper intermediate shaft. This is the lower. So the lower shaft has a universal joint instead of a rag joint. This guy right here. So that should tighten things up on the bottom. And the top half has this, I don't know what's inside here, but there's some kind of plastic joint. And I think this is the one that causes most of the play. So we're going to be replacing both of these in one shot. This guy will make more room for the V8 because it's a little bit narrower than the stock one. I don't really like these set screws, so I am going to be welding this together. So we'll kind of jump right in and start there. Give this thing time to cool down a little bit and we'll paint it. And then while that is cooling and drying, then we'll yank the steering column out because I'm pretty sure you have to remove it to get the swap done. So let's jump right in. Now, full disclosure, I really have no reason to believe loud noises that a shaft like this actually needs to be welded, but in my mind, definitely isn't going to hurt as long as I don't get this too hot, which I will put something on there to keep that cool. But I've just never loved the idea of relying on set screws because, like, yeah, that's not going to go anywhere, but a little bit of weld, especially a pretty TIG weld around there, definitely makes me feel warm and fuzzy. Where this doesn't. Of course, there will be a set screw on the bottom, but there's nothing we can do about that because you have to be able to remove it from the box. So, what we can do is get some paint out of here. Obviously welding makes a lot of heat, and the main thing I'm trying to do is just stop the U-joint from getting too warm. Can't really take it apart because the sides are kind of like crimped in, but this will just help take away a little bit of that heat. Now you're not supposed to cool weld too rapidly. good as new. Or I guess better than new, I should say. That's all it took. Well, we get everything finally pulled out of the truck. Not that big of a deal. Here's kind of the old versus new. The shafts look a little bit different, but they connect in the same way on that end and down here. There's a tiny bit of play in this guy, not a huge amount, but hopefully that'll tighten up the steering a little, make it worth the effort. Down here, the new U-joint is definitely going to be tighter than the rag joint, and this hooker shaft is definitely a little bit slimmer than the original one, which will help for clearance with headers and stuff like that. I don't really need the clearance right now. I think eventually with the, if I do a turbo setup or if I just have the LS in there, every little bit of clearance is going to help. But I was hoping, and we'll find out, but I was hoping this would make the steering a lot tighter. But anyway, we've got the column over here, and this new shaft simply slides on like that. We'll get it bolted in, get the little dust boot kind of slid back over. Probably need to put that on first, but we'll get that put back together and get the column back in the truck. Okay, so it's a few days later now. I had a chance to drive the S-10 back and forth to work a few times, and I gotta say, I don't think the steering shaft upgrade actually did a whole lot to improve the symptom that I was trying to fix. So I don't want to say it was like money thrown away because I wanted to do those things anyway. It's good peace of mind, but it didn't really, it's maybe like 10% better, but it didn't really fix the problem how I hoped it would have. But whenever we get the V8 in the S10, it'll give us just a little bit more room for the headers, and that universal joint instead of a rag joint will provide a little bit more precise steering. But the problem still kind of persists, so either I need to redo the alignment and see where the caster's at, because if the caster angle's too far out of spec, I think it could make it kind of have a little bit of that vague, wandering steering feel, or that fancy steering box that I put in that I talked up about how great it was going to be and how tight everything should be, that potentially could be the issue. And that's honestly the direction that I'm leaning, but I don't know. It's now a problem for another day, but I will fix it eventually. Anyway, today's Friday, and we're going to hop onto another project real quick. We got the UglyTruck back in the shop, and as you can see by this pile of stuff, I'm going to undo some of the upgrades that we did gosh, 2 years ago now, trying to chase a 10-second quarter-mile pass. At that point, this was like my primary quote-unquote race truck, even though it's kind of a street truck still. And I wanted to get it as, I don't even want to say as light as possible because we only took like 150 or 200 pounds out of the truck, but I gave up a lot of things I really liked, and one of them was this full-length Denali center console, so I'm putting it back in. This is from like an 01 or an 02 Yukon Denali. It's got like the cup holders with a little fancy cover on it. You know, it's got the ashtray, not that I don't smoke, so I don't use an ashtray, but it's got like a lot more deluxe feel to it. It has this double, whatchamacallit, console lid. It's got storage on the inside. You have to like double tap the button to make it work. But anyhow, we've got that, we've got the dash piece, and it's kind of gimmicky, but my favorite part is the trip computer. I got this all wired up way back when I installed it, probably 3 or 4 years ago, but yeah, I really like it in there. So even though it's a couple pounds heavier, we're gonna throw it back in the truck, so we'll get that knocked out real quick. I did think about taking some of the interior from the scrapyard truck and putting it into the UglyTruck, because this actually has a much nicer pair of seats in it. Excuse me, but the problem is, as you can tell, even though they're nice, they're not the same color. That's the darker interior, where this has the lighter interior. And maybe someday I'll do the full switch, but actually probably not, because this with a Denali console, it matches everything. And I have, like, you know, it's got the dark wood grain stuff around here, has it down there, and I already have the dark wood grain dash. I have the Denali door panel. So yeah, overall, I'm kind of happy with this interior. So enough yapping. Let me get that console thrown back in real quick. All right, step one, I'm gonna remove the seats. I don't know how many times I've had the seats out of this truck, but it's probably a lot. And the console. I think this is going in the race truck. Sharp. Now there are a few electronic differences, just in terms of like the cigarette outlets and stuff like that, between these two consoles. But luckily, since this Denali console's been in there before, I have already wired up like the trip computer, all the cigarette lighters and all that good stuff. So plug and play today. So we're going to do a little bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul here. I think when I took apart the scrapyard truck, yes, we have that bag to help us out. I know, I'm pretty sure at the house I got the rest of the screws that I need that actually came out of this console, but it's all the same. I'll have to go back and find the weight on this stuff from when I did my last video, because it's kind of beefy. I mean, I took out the amplifier and I took out as much as I could from this, but just like all the brackets and all the console pieces, it definitely kind of adds up. And just like that, we've got UglyTruck put back together in its rightful street form. Now, I really like this truck. The only thing I wish it had that it doesn't is air conditioning. It has all the HVAC stuff under the dashboard still, but whenever I designed the turbo manifold, I had to give up AC because I didn't want to build a full custom header to clear all the factory AC stuff. Now, there's a chance I might get real crazy and eventually try to refit that, but for now, it's pretty much spring and rolling into summer. The racetracks are going to be opening up. The sun's out, the roads will be pretty dry, and I just want to start using it and enjoying this truck again. Like if you ever, for me, it's like if you have a tough or a bad day at work, just hopping in something like this, going for a cruise down the road, rolling into the throttle and just blitzing the tires. Like that'll melt all of your cares and your stresses away. And I mean, now when we're driving it, it's going to be just that much more comfortable. Not a big deal. The only thing I wish is that this little trip computer guy worked a little bit better. I remember when I installed it, you had to like wiggle the connector just right to get it to make. And I think there's a connection on the circuit board inside that's not quite working. So I may try to find another one at the junkyard. So if you know where one is, let me know. But yeah, that little trip computer, I think it's a neat little doodad. And it actually, when I got it wired up, like it worked with the fuel mileage, the clock, and all that stuff, which is, and it showed top speed, which is kind of fun too. So anyway, that's going to put a wrap on my week at the shop. It's been a crazy week, and I didn't obviously get a whole lot done on projects. But thank you guys for watching. Come back soon.